Hey guys, just wanted to do a quick little video on how I demonstrate laying out dovetails. I always start with a piece of paper and I tape it down just so it doesn't move around on you. And I find that doing it on paper makes it more understandable to students if they've never seen this before. It's just getting the concept down. And I actually draw this out in pen, and I just do an arbitrary width, and I point that out to the class that this, I'm not doing any measurements because this could literally be any width board. In class, I would use pencil to mark kind of the scribe line down here, but that doesn't show up so much on video, so I'll go, for the sake of video, I'll do it in pen as well. And there's no measuring. They didn't measure 200, 300 years ago when they were laying out dovetails. They just did it with a simple pair of calipers or dividers. And you essentially you have to start with the half pins. And it's purely aesthetic on how wide or narrow you want to make it. Typically, what's kind of an acceptable, pleasing aesthetic would be about 1/4 inch to 1/3 of an inch. So I'm going to go guess right about there. And you make a little tick mark because these dividers don't have any way to mark. So I'll make a tick mark there and a tick mark there. And I'll just draw in that half pin there. Now, I would explain to the class, if you're doing this with any regularity, you're probably going to want to buy a couple pair of dividers. These are $10 on TaylorToolWorks.com, and they're pretty inexpensive, and you just set this aside. This is what you'd be using for doing out the other 3 corners. But in this case, we're just going to use the same pair because it doesn't really matter. So the next step is we don't worry about this width anymore. The only part we concentrate on is between these two tail marks here. And if you want to do 4 pins, it's just dividing it by however many tails you want to put on your board. So let's say you want to do 4 tails across here. Well, then you're just dividing it in roughly 1/4 of the length for that wide of the board. So we're just going to kind of guesstimate here about 1/4, and then you walk that across. Now, it's important to know that the space between your tails is going to be equal to this right here, right where your 2 pins are. And that's probably a little wide, so we're going to tighten that up a little bit and walk it across again. And now we're short, so we're going to widen it again. And I tell students that with this method, it should really take no more than 3 tries. You're either going to do it a little bit wide or a little bit narrow. And by the 3rd shot, you should have it kind of zeroed in. And you can see that's exactly what happened here. So we're pretty happy with that gap that we'll have between this mark here. So let's go back and mark it off. We'll put a tick mark here and a tick mark here and a tick mark here. And just for clarity, I'll draw that in. So we now have half of our tails plus the one at the end. Now, all you have to do is start at this side, not at the end, but here, and walk it back. Another tick mark, and another tick mark. And now we have 4 tails. I would always do at least 2 demos just to kind of illustrate how quickly you could do this. And again, it really doesn't matter if you want 5 or 6. You're just dividing the board by fifths or sixths. If you want thirds, you divide by a third and do the same spacing. So we're gonna do, again, probably about a quarter, guesstimating. So get our half pin. Get our half pin on this side. And just draw that in. Let's say we're gonna do a third this time. So we're gonna expand that out. And we just really have to guesstimate a third. I'm gonna go back right there. And that's pretty good right off the bat. I'm gonna widen it by half a turn there. Let's just do a half a turn. So, same thing. I'm gonna do a tick mark here, and a tick mark here. Draw that half in, and we're gonna walk it back. Whoops, boy. And this would be the waist. So that's essentially it. But I found that if you just show the students this, what happens is they go back to their benches and they start wanting to lay out these tails in the same perspective as that they're seeing it on paper, which is, as we know, not good. You still have to do it, so you really, what I do after you do this is I actually do one more demo on a live board. So same thing here. We're going to do our marks here and a mark here. And just for the camera, I'll darken that in with a little bit of pencil there. And this one here. And let's say we want to do 4 pins across. As a matter of fact, just for the illustrative purposes on camera, we're going to draw in those half pins. Obviously, you wouldn't do that in front of the class, but just to illustrate this, and you, of course, demonstrate this while the board is clamped up. I don't have that. I'm doing this at the kitchen table because it's raining outside, so we're going to have to deal with this compromising conditions here. So let's say we want 4 pins. So I would, again, just softly walk that across. And that's actually pretty good right out of the gate. So that's where we stick it in there, make a little dimple, walk it across, and you probably can't see the dimple, so I'm going to emphasize this with our scribe line, and another one there, and last one there. Then I'll walk it back on this side, there, there, and there. Draw those in. And then take your dovetail marking gauge, and typically want to do a little tick mark here just so you could see it wrapped around the corner a little bit. Then you can take your dovetail. I also point out that these are about $10 on Taylor Toolworks or taytools.com. So not real expensive to get the basic tools for doing pretty good dovetail layout. Okay, and pretend I already had a scribe line across the bottom here. That's obviously first step. I'm just demonstrating the how the basic layout goes and how you could get even consistent dovetails each and every time. From here, you would clamp this up, use your dovetail saw, and demonstrate how you would put this at an angle. I typically use a square because it's much easier to cut a straight line up and down than it is to try to cut an angle. So I angle it in the vise like that, cut all these, and then reverse it and do the other side and get that clamped up, and then that's it.